enough. And that's the wrong heart to have. Like, I've done enough, because we can never do enough for the Lord. And we're not working for people. We're working for the Lord first. And how we do that is to love people and to serve people that God also loves and serves. But another thing to that is that I think some of the older generation can feel like they've become irrelevant, or that they don't have a purpose left. Like, like they're not young and their bodies don't operate the same and they're tired and all that kind of stuff. And I feel like sometimes they can feel irrelevant, and us as the younger generation have to encourage them and let them know that they're still wholly used for the purpose of God, and that they have a huge part to play in the church and imparting wisdom and all of the things, So we have a part in that too, in including them. A lot of times they get excluded in things, and we need to make sure that we are including them, encouraging them, and making sure that they are encouraged too, because they need encouragement too. I mean, they're approaching what they know to be the later years of their life, right? So that's a huge thing for us to be able to do as the younger generation, is to encourage them and show them that we're there for them if they need something too, right? Okay. I don't know. I didn't mean to get off on that tangent, but that's important. Okay, so let's keep going with verse 13. Then Joshua blessed him, and he gave Hebron to Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, for an inheritance. Therefore Hebron became the inheritance of Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, to this day, because he wholly followed the Lord, the God of Israel. Now the name of Hebron, formerly known as Kirath Arabah, Arabah, was the greatest man among the Anakim, and the land had rest from war. Because Caleb went in knowing that the Lord was going to give it to him, because the Lord said that he was going to give it to him. He had so much faith to know that it was going to be accomplished because of who was standing behind him, right? Okay, this is the thing that I wanted to talk to y'all about. This is one verse. It's in Joshua chapter 15, and this is the whole like Joshua chapter 15 is the allotment for Judah, right? So there's a lot that okay, so it wasn't the Nephilim, I don't think, in the Promised Land, because I just looked down and looked at the study notes, and it says Anakim were apparently a race of very tall people descended from Anak. After the Israelites conquered Canaan, many of the Anakim took up residence with the Philistines. Because of this, many assume that Goliath was descended from Anakim. So they think that maybe these were just huge people, like considered to be giants. They were, think about like the biggest person that, like probably also very prepared for battle. Like not just the tall, like slender, skinny people that you think of, like the hulky, like probably very big people to go up against. So, Caleb's faith still, he was like, I don't care. God said that he's going to give it to me. I believe in God more than I believe in my own self-sufficiency. So anyway, I love that. I love all these little nuggets of truth. It spins me off into this like whole other thought process of God. Okay, verse 63 of chapter 15. Y'all, okay, we got to talk about this. It says, but the Jebusites, the inhabitants of Jerusalem, the people of Judah could not drive out. So the Jebusites dwell with the people of Judah at Jerusalem to this day. What? The whole purpose of all of this has been to drive out the Canaanites. And now the center of it, Jerusalem, you're going to let them get what? This doesn't make sense. Like the Jebusites, first of all, why the first thing we have to point out is like could not drive out. They could not drive them out. That doesn't make any sense. What do you mean they could not drive them out? Well, in reading one of the study notes, it's not that God wasn't powerful enough to allow Israel to drive them out, but it's almost like we start to see the decline in the faith. What happens a lot of times when God gives us exactly what we want, a lot of times he starts getting left out of the equation. It's like, okay, I prayed for that. God gave me what he wanted. I'm comfortable. I've gotten what I wanted. So I'm just going to take a chill now. Like, I'm just going to take a backseat because I'm in a good place right now. So maybe I don't have to read my Bible as much as I should. I'm in a good place right now. Like, God's fulfilled his promise. Maybe maybe I can go back to reading those books, or listening to that other music, or watching that show, that God convicted me of. But I'm in a good place with God now. So maybe that was just for that time when I just really needed to be seeking him, and maybe now it's okay. And we start justifying all of these things in our life because we're like, okay, we're good. We're at a good place with God now. So maybe those things he was like pruning for my life was just so I would seek him more. And now that I'm in a good place with God, maybe it's not going to impact me as much. Maybe I can run back to that sin just a little bit more. And we do that. You can't tell me that you've never done that. You cannot. From my personal experience, it happens. It's so the enemy is so quick to start justifying those things in your mind, like, and start sneaking them back in. Like, maybe just just read this book, or maybe just listen to this song, or maybe just like this, and before you know it, you're like lost as a goose, because you're like, I don't know which way's up. I don't know what I'm doing. I never intended to be here. I feel so lost. I feel like, where did God go? Like, I was so close to him. It's like I turned around the next day and he's not there anymore. And it's not that God walked away. It's that you're walking away. And that's not a lose your salvation type of thing. That's like that wavering faith that we see, that, you gotta crucify the desires of the flesh. Well, sometimes we let the flesh sneak back in, and that's why we have the Holy Spirit to kind of knock on our heart and be like, hey, I've been trying to talk to you. I've been talking to you in a whisper, and you've been drowning me out by the screams of the world. So I'm going to need you to tune back into my channel, because your focus is somewhere else. That conviction that comes from the Holy Spirit that like kind of jerks you back a little bit, and it's like, hey, I need you to recenter and refocus on me. God will do that. He will get your attention if you're his child. He will absolutely get your attention. He might start off soft, and sometimes he may come in with he may like lambaste you or something like that, with something that you're not even expecting. But God will get your attention if you are his child, because your purpose in your life is to bring him glory. It is not to self-satisfy your own fleshly desires, because you have surrendered to God. I'm talking to myself right now more than anybody else. You have surrendered to God, and so the world doesn't get to win. It doesn't get to win the wage of war on your mind, because that battle's already been won. God crucified his son to win that battle for you. And so God is not going to let the world take over what he has said is his. And so if you've surrendered your life to him, those nudges, those hey, and then that slap, sometimes that comes across our face when we get hit with the hard stuff. That's God saying like, hey, come back to me. Come back to me, because your life is no longer your own. It belongs to me, because I bought you with a price. And that's it's not that you're a slave, it's that you've been set free. And I don't want you to be enslaved to those things again, because those things are for your ruin, and I'm for your good. And I'm going to turn around and work them for good, but I need you to trust me with them. So what happens is, I think from the study notes, what I've read is this is the beginning of the decline. The Israelites have gotten what they wanted, and now they've let comfortability, that's not a word, but they've let their own comforts come into the picture, and they've kind of been like, And so because they're like that, and they're not sold out and wholly devoted to God, they're not going to be able to drive out their enemies, because they would take the glory for it, right? If they could drive out their enemies in their own strength, they're going to take the glory from it, away from God. And so God's not going to allow them to do that, because they are his people. He loves them too much to let them take the glory away from him. And also, he's the only one that deserves it. So the Jebusites stay in Jerusalem. I think this is so interesting, because it sets the stage for the coming Messiah to be rejected. Did y'all get that when y'all read this too? Because when I was reading this, and it talks about the decline, and we're going to go into that in Judges, like the spiritual decline of the people of Israel. It starts setting the stage to why Jesus was crucified. Because why did God say that the Canaanites had to be drove out? of the land and couldn't dwell with them in the land. It's because they would influence the spiritual health and the worship of the Israelites. Well, the Israelites let them stay and stopped depending on God to be able to drive them out. They got comfortable with being comfortable. And so because that happened, there's a spiritual decline that happens. The people of the Canaanites were able to stay in there with the tribe of Judah. Now, this is a tribe that our lion, our Messiah comes from. They're dwelling there with them, and it's going to impact their pursuit of God, which was the whole reason why God said that they had to be driven out in the first place. And then years later, our Messiah is crucified by the very people that he came to save and was prophesied to come and save. Isn't it crazy how getting comfortable and being okay with letting the wrong people in your circle or a few of the wrong things that you're inclined to be, well, we talked about this on Sunday, Isn't that crazy? I didn't know about it either, Victoria, but it's so crazy. We talked about this on Sunday that, my pastor at church was talking about how, or we talked about it in Sunday school. I'll talk about Sunday school and then bring it up. And this is the last thing we'll talk about, but we get comfortable with being comfortable.